Baby boomers were told to work hard, keep quiet, and never complain. And most of them did exactly that, for decades. But what they left behind is something you've probably felt your entire life and never been able to put into words. They'll work overtime to pay your bills, but can't say, "I'm proud of you," out loud. They'll hold a family together through anything. But ask them how they really feel, and the room goes quiet. That's not a character flaw. It's a pattern that was handed to them as children, and it never stopped. And once you see it, you'll never look at your parents, your partner, or even yourself the same way again. To understand baby boomers, you have to understand the world they were born into. They arrived between 1946 and 1964. But the dates don't matter as much as who raised them and what those people had just survived. Their parents came out of the Great Depression and World War II, back to back. Extreme poverty followed by global war. And when it was finally over, those parents wanted one thing more than anything: a normal life. So they built one. New homes, new jobs, a growing economy, but they also carried something invisible into those homes. A belief that emotions were dangerous, that talking about pain made you weak, that the best thing you could do for your family was keep your head down and keep going. Boomers didn't learn this from a book. They absorbed it at the dinner table, in the silence after an argument, in the way their fathers stared straight ahead and their mothers smiled through everything. The message was simple: be grateful, work hard, and don't make problems. And that message became the foundation for everything that came after. Growing up in that environment created a set of unspoken rules, and these rules became so deep that most boomers don't even realize they're following them. Rule number 1: emotions are weakness. If you cried, you were told to stop. If you were angry, you were told to behave. If you were scared, you were told there's nothing to be scared of. Over time, the lesson was clear. What you feel doesn't matter. What matters is what you do. Rule number 2: loyalty means silence. You didn't air your family's problems. You didn't tell the neighbors what happened behind closed doors. If things were bad at home, you handled it privately. This created a generation that learned to keep secrets, not out of shame, but out of duty. Rule number 3: your worth comes from your productivity. Boomers were raised to believe that a good person is a hardworking person. Rest was laziness. Asking for help was failure. Your job title, your house, your ability to provide, that was your identity. Now here's where it gets interesting from a psychological standpoint. These 3 rules: suppress emotions, stay silent, and prove your worth through work, are the exact conditions that lead to something psychologists call emotional avoidance. It's not that boomers don't feel things deeply, they do, but they were trained from childhood to push those feelings down and keep moving. And when you spend 40 or 50 years pushing emotions down, they don't disappear. They show up in other ways that most people completely misread. When someone spends a lifetime avoiding their emotions, those emotions don't just vanish. They leak out sideways. And this is where a lot of misunderstanding between generations comes from. The first way it shows up is through control. Many boomers have a strong need to be in charge of plans, of conversations, of how things are done. To an outsider, it looks like stubbornness. But psychologically, control is what happens when someone doesn't feel safe with uncertainty. If you were never allowed to express fear as a child, you learn to manage fear by managing everything around you. The second way is through the body. Headaches, back pain, stomach problems, sleep issues. Research has shown a strong link between unexpressed emotions and physical pain. The body holds what the mind refuses to process. And many boomers have spent years going to doctors for problems that didn't start in their body. They started in their nervous system. The third way, and maybe the most painful, is emotional distance. Many adult children of boomers describe the same experience. They love their parent. They know their parent loves them. But there's a wall, a gap they can never quite close. That gap isn't rejection, it's protection. It's the only way their parent learned to survive. The tragedy is that the very strategy that helped them get through childhood is now the thing keeping them from the closeness they actually want. This emotional blueprint didn't just affect how boomers feel on the inside, it shaped every relationship they've ever had. Boomers grew up watching their parents stay together no matter what. Divorce was shameful. So many of them entered marriages with one unspoken agreement. You stick it out. You don't leave, you make it work. For some, that commitment built something real. But for others, It created relationships where two people lived side by side but never truly knew each other. They shared a home, raised kids, split responsibilities. But emotional intimacy? That was never part of the deal, because neither person was ever taught how to do it. This is also why many boomers show love through actions instead of words. They'll fix your car. They'll send you money. They'll make sure you're fed and safe, but saying, "I'm proud of you," or "I was wrong," can feel almost impossible. It's not that they don't feel it. It's that their brain was wired to show, not tell. The same pattern shows up in friendships. Wide social circles, very few deep connections. They can talk about sports, work, the news, but ask them how they're really doing and the conversation stops. Even at 60 or 70 years old, many boomers have never had a single conversation where they told someone the full truth about how they feel. And then there's work. This generation tied their entire identity to their career. So when retirement comes, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. When your worth was always measured by what you produce, what happens when you stop producing? That question haunts more boomers than anyone wants to admit. This is where things get complicated. Because boomers didn't just carry these patterns alone, they passed them down. And then the generations that came after started pushing back. Millennials and Gen Z grew up in a completely different psychological environment. Therapy became normal. Talking about feelings became encouraged. Boundaries became a common word. And when these younger generations looked at their boomer parents and said, "We need to talk about our relationship," many boomers didn't know what to do with that. Not because they didn't care, but because that kind of conversation was everything they were trained to avoid. So what happens? The younger generation says, "You never validated my feelings." The boomer hears, "You were a bad parent." The younger generation says, "I need space to heal." The boomer hears, "You failed." Neither side is wrong, but they're speaking two completely different emotional languages. And this creates a painful cycle. The adult child pulls away to protect their mental health. The boomer feels abandoned and confused. The adult child sees the boomer's silence as proof they don't care. The boomer sees the distance as rejection. Both people are hurting. Both people want connection, but neither one knows how to cross that gap. Here's what most people miss about this conflict. Boomers didn't choose this programming. They didn't wake up one day and decide to be emotionally unavailable. They were shaped by a world that told them feelings were dangerous. And by the time someone told them otherwise, they had already spent 40 or 50 years building a life around that belief. Changing at that point isn't just hard. For many, it feels like being asked to become a completely different person. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Here's what nobody expected. The generation that was told to never look back is starting to turn around. More boomers are going to therapy now than at any other point in history. Not all of them, not even most of them, but the numbers are growing. And the ones who take that step often say the same thing. "I wish I had done this 30 years ago." Some are having conversations with their adult children that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. They're saying things like, "I didn't know how to handle that," or "I think I hurt you and I'm sorry." These moments are small, but psychologically, they're massive. Because for someone who is raised to never show weakness, those words take more courage than most people will ever understand. And retirement, the thing that terrifies so many boomers, is becoming a turning point for some of them. Without the distraction of work, they're being forced to sit with themselves for the first time. And while that's uncomfortable, it's also an opportunity. Some are finally asking themselves a question they were never allowed to ask before. What do I actually want? Not what was expected of me, not what I was supposed to do, but what do I want? For a generation that spent their whole life performing, that question is revolutionary. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about. This shift isn't just about boomers helping themselves. It's about breaking a chain. Because every pattern that a boomer recognizes and changes is one less pattern their children and grandchildren have to carry. And that might be the most important psychological work any generation has ever done. There's one more thing about baby boomers that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important part of this entire video. They're afraid. Not of getting older, not of running out of money. Those fears are there, sure. But the deeper fear, the one that sits underneath everything, is that they'll reach the end of their life and realize they never truly let anyone in. That the walls they built to survive childhood became the same walls that kept out the people they loved the most. And here's what makes that fear so painful. Most boomers can feel it. They know something is missing. They see other people having close, open relationships and they wonder why theirs feel different. But they don't have the language for it. Nobody ever gave them the words. So they do what they've always done. They stay busy. They take care of everyone else. They say, "I'm fine," when they're not. And they hope that somehow love will be understood without ever having to be spoken. But it doesn't work that way. It never did. The good news is, it's not too late. Not at 60, not at 70, not ever. The brain can form new pathways at any age. Old patterns can be unlearned. And the conversations that feel impossible right now can become the ones that change everything. But only if someone goes first. The strongest people you know are also the most silently exhausted. The generation that built homes, careers, and entire families from nothing never learned to build a door to let people in. They spent their whole life holding it together, carrying weight they were handed as children and never given permission to set down. So if no one has ever told you, you're allowed to put it down now. You've carried it long enough.